I want to bring in legacy admissions because now you have some Asian groups that are filing a complaint specifically at Harvard to for Harvard to end is legacy admissions. I personally have a problem with that because if you try to overturn that, then that's going to spill into, I believe, HBCUs. Because if I am an alumni somewhere and I pay a whole bunch of money or millions of dollars and I got my name on a building, you damn right I want my kid to have admissions. I think legacy should stay intact in institutions, not just at Harvard, at HBCUs and all types of different institutions, religious, it doesn't matter. So what do you,
Okay. Yeah.
how do,
Let me
what,
say on personally on that. One of my mentors in law school, he was older than me by 10 years. He had been a prison guard before he wound up going to law school. He wound up retiring as a judge, and his wife is still on a circuit court of appeals for the federal courts. His daughter applied to UCLA admissions. Her uncle, also now a retired judge, also went to UCLA. So between the two of them, they had in endowments and other things contributed $500,000 plus to UCLA law school. All right. She wound up having to go to USC because they wanted to ignore the fact that uncle and father and mother were great judges, alumni of UCLA, sent the bastards $500,000 and more benefits. And they want to tell her, well, you're 100th of a point off. We can't accept you. So she wound up getting readily accepted by USC Law School, from which she graduated about 15 years ago. It is the most rotten mess going.
right. And now they want to challenge that Harvard's admissions is challenged for favoring children of alumni. But, and this is why it's important for Black graduates out of HBCUs, the alumni, this is why you need to contribute financially back to your institution. Because if you do what, quote unquote, the white folk are doing at Harvard and all these other elites, why are you not doing it for your own, for your children to come there, you know what I'm saying, and excel, because you're excelling in your careers, you're giving your child a good education, put them in your send them to your university and contribute. That's why it's important for alumni to financially contribute. And HBCUs have a very low endowment of contributions from their alumni, the lowest.
Thing on that. If you're an alumni of a historically Black university or college, damn it, get on what's happening there and get rid of these folk that are administrators that are stealing your former institution blind. That's a big problem with them. Not everybody involved in administration, but too many are simply stealing. That, by the way, is one of the reasons that coach decided to leave his historically Black, et cetera, and go to the University of Colorado because people were stealing too much. And he didn't want to get caught up in it.
Oh, Deion Sanders, yeah. Deshaun, you didn't have your hand up, but you did come. You requested to come up and speak. And anybody want to request to come up, please do so. But when you come up, please raise your hand so I know that you want to speak. So, did you want to say something, Deshaun? Okay, I don't think he hears.
Well, let me apologize for the passion, but I spent many a long sleepless week along with some friends, some of whom are no longer with us, to get these jackasses up there in the Berkeley Bay Area not to do what they did behind their selfish little punk asses. And the bottom line is that I am just absolutely angry to listen to all of this nonsense based on some crap that they engineered. They set up the dialogue. They screwed things up for everybody and set the tone and the language that is now associated with what used to be something else. No,
I'm
it's
sorry.
wrong. It needs to be addressed and it needs to be exposed.
Another thing, right? This is affirmative action was not overturned just when it comes to admissions. You cannot use race. Does this
alone, if you can show race was something that somebody had to work above and beyond to overcome on an individual basis, yes. If you came from a deprived situation, but you managed to get that far, yes. You can't say that you want race relied upon if you come from a Bill Cosby Huxtable family situation.
Okay. Well,
that's what it is.
Now, what does this new ruling affect DACA? The illegal, kids that are born they were born here, but their parents were not citizens. Their parents were illegals.
But they're citizens. The Constitution says if you are born on American soil, it doesn't make any difference who your parents are. You are a citizen, and by the way, you can run for president.
Yeah, I got a problem with that. I think I don't know. I think we need to kind of change that up a little bit.
No, you don't. What the bottom line is
so you're saying DACA kids should get preferential treatment?
In other words, if you were born here, it doesn't make any difference where you came from, because you have to understand a first few presidents that applied to a whole lot of Madison. Look at Madison. Where did he go to school? Coming up in Jamaica, where he was born. All right.
Well, Alexandria, he came from St. Kitts or somewhere, but the point but he wasn't an illegal. So
the point is it doesn't make any difference. You were born here. You are a product of this soil, just like a crop. That's the theory. So you are here. You can run for president. By the way, if your mama, dad, they're U.S. citizens, or your mama's a U.S. citizen, because that makes it easy to determine your lineage. If you popped out the twat, you belong.
Yeah, but you know what? And I'm gonna come to you, Brian. But
they don't do it for just the dad under American law, is because he might not be the dad. But if your mama's American,
the mama ain't American.
No, listen to me. I'm going somewhere else. If your mama's an American citizen, or both of your parents are American citizens, it doesn't make any difference where in the world you were born. You are an American citizen. But if you weren't born on American soil, you're not eligible for president. American soil is determined as a state, a territory, a protectorate, an enclave, a consulate, an embassy, a military or naval base. So a lot of embassies find that American women rush in there to give birth on the premises, and they've got medical facilities and some. So they.
You mean illegals?
No,
I don't.
Not illegals. This is if you're an American citizen, because they can deny the illegals entry into the embassy. So
I see what you're saying. The embassy. Okay, so listen.
If you're an American woman and you're 8 months pregnant and you're in Europe and you can't get back to the U.S., you can make arrangements with an embassy to give birth on American soil, so your child will be eligible for U.S. president. That's the problem with Cruz, who is high up in the Republican hierarchy. He bragged about being born in Canada. He's an American citizen because both of his parents were, but he's not eligible for president.
He probably never wanted to be president. We all know presidents are selected. They're not even really technically elected. However, wait, let me make my point here. Let me make my point.
Go ahead.
Because I do have and then I'm going to go to Brian. Listen, and I don't think this is racist or bigot, but if you are a DACA person, meaning that both your parents or even one of your, let's say both, because they're usually both, are illegal, and they came over here illegally, never obtained citizenship, right? You're an anchor baby, and it gave birth to you, because a lot of women are purposely getting pregnant just to come over here illegally and give birth so their child could be a citizen. You should not be eligible to be president, number one. And the fact is that, okay, now with the race-based affirmative action new ruling, you should not get preferential treatment over American citizens. And then thirdly, the reason why I say that is because it's just you would be considered first generation citizen, pseudo or whatever, because your parents didn't do it the legal way. But then you have people who've done it the legal way that don't even have a green card yet, or only a green card, and been paying taxes and did it the right way. They're not citizens, but because your mama was pregnant and popped you out, you get to jump between hundreds and thousands of other people who are waiting on a green card, who have a green card for 10, 20 years. That's not right. So it does need to have some provisions when it comes to that. And I do not want this. Wait. Because of so many influx right now at the border that's already over here, that they're already bust into these sanctuary cities, those parents who are pregnant do have a dream for, yes, my kid can be president because I gave birth to them. And I'm sorry, I do not want to. Wait. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
I do not want this country. I don't want to be under a rulership of a South American. I do not. So go ahead, Judge, and I'm gonna go to Brian.
Okay, the point is, it doesn't make a difference what you want. It's embraced in the Constitution itself. It's not a statute. It's written into the Constitution. So the Constitution was written at a time when this was a wilderness, the biggest left on the planet Earth. It was filled with dangerous natives. It was filled with dangerous animals. And it was filled with dangerous circumstances. We needed population. So they wrote that into the Constitution. And by the way, when you talk about selected, if you read the Constitution, it says the president is the chief executive. Now, some people want to confuse the country with a corporation. It is not a corporation. And the country came into being before they invented corporations. Those were some things that came into effect after the Civil War, wound up relying on the 15th Amendment, were creatures of the state legislatures, and what they wound up being is fictional people. They were trying to achieve what crown license allowed in England, where you had limited liability companies, LTDs. So the country is not based on a corporation. Corporations are to an extent based on the country. And one of the things they're based on is the electoral college. You see, being a president, the chief executive officer, as the person is described in the Constitution of the whole united group of states, is an important function. So you should have effectively a board of directors, and that is the electoral college. A board of directors is elected by the stockholders. The board of directors selects the chief executive officer for the corporation and for the functional officers who operate it. The electoral college was elected popularly by the citizens who were eligible to vote. And those citizens selected their board, and the board selected the chief executive officer, meaning the president. Corporations relied upon the constitutional model for the government of the United States to set themselves up. So corporations resemble in great part the United States government. The United States government is not a corporation, but that's why we have the board of it.
All right, I want to go, Brian.
Yeah, there.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. It is 10 minutes after 2 o'clock where I am, Eastern Time, North Carolina. Thank you so much, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please like and retweet the space so that others might come and to those of you that don't want your voices heard, there's a comment section down below. Make sure that you add your comment and someone will address you there also. Judge, it is so good that I'm able to bless you and thank you for your service. I've watched you a long time. I've spoken to you once before and you did not get to answer my question. It was in phenomenology, another space. I apologize, another space, but I wanted to try and bring it back to your attention. You mentioned the Metis system. I hope that you can hear my voice well. Thank you. Good. Thank you for your voice. So out of Yale College, okay, so this Metis system, I remember when I was growing up, listening to you along through the late 80s, early 90s, into 2000, I had children, put them to school. 2001, 2002, 2003, the Supreme Court brought under fire the Dewey Decimal System, the library system, which I didn't like to begin with, had many flaws in it that I seen growing up and learning through it, but it's all that we had. In 2001, the Supreme Court brought it under fire, saying that Dewey Decimal, the library system, did not see the interpretation coming of the internet and children being exploited on the internet. So it came under fire. And through a series of decisions, it was replaced by a series of library systems which have destroyed our First Amendment. I watched Title IX, which has been in for 50 years now, be expanded the 23rd. Which
do you have a question, or are you just making a statement?
No, I have
stage for something. Yeah.
Yeah, but can you
ma'am.
just arrive to the question and not really prolong the statement too much?
But that's the foundation of the question, which that's important. But I'll go right on to it. And yes, I understand it's very hard for you to tolerate my voice right now, but I'm getting there.
I get the point. I know where Dana's coming from, and I know where you're coming from. You're laying the foundation because there's background always to what.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but can you get off a speaker? Because it's a lot of feedback in the background.
I don't hear it, but
no, because he just muted up. But if you're on a speaker, Brian, can you remove yourself from the speaker? Because I can hear the feedback in the background. Because this space is not only being recorded here, but outside of here as well. That's going to be uploaded on YouTube. But go ahead.
Continue, sir, please.
Okay, so just briefly and quickly. So with the expansion of Title IX, the rollback of due process around the First Amendment, changing it from clear and convincing evidence, which Trump put in as a blocker. Now it's went back to the old, and expanded now, which is preponderance of evidence. Can you explain a portion of the difference between the two, clear and convincing versus preponderance of evidence? Because the interpretation between the judge and the prosecutor is going to destroy us over the next year and a half.
Okay, clear and convincing means if you take a rational, logical, reasonable, and analytical person, the evidence that is presented will convince that person clearly that your proposition is true. By the preponderance of the evidence is different in that it simply means most of the evidence is in favor of your proposition. It does not have to be clear and convincing. It just has to be valid. In other words, okay, that's reasonable, logical, and irrational, but I'm not convinced. That's not convincing. It may be relevant evidence, admissible evidence. You may have more of that, but it's not necessarily something that will cause a dispassionate, neutral person to be convinced. That's the difference, if that makes sense. Just
yes, sir.
That point.
Yes, sir, it does. And to make my statement clear there, so based on recorded voices and recorded written statements, with the taking away, the robbing of the Fourth and Fifth Amendment and the rollback of the First Amendment, the only right that I do have now is the right to remain silent. Right, Judge?
Well, you saw an attack on that when they got the conviction of Dr. Bill Cosby, and you saw what the state appellate court relied upon in chief to reverse it, which was violation of his Fifth Amendment. Now, years and years and years ago, when I was at UCLA, I had a minor of political science that became my major. I had the privilege of having a visiting professor emeritus from the University of Moscow. She was a woman, a good communist, acknowledged, admittedly. And this was at the height of the Cold War. She said America is in grave danger of becoming a fascist nation, not from some jackboot wearing, goose stepping political thugs as Germany became, but from some weak, she called them pink panty wearing, long haired hippies who do not have the personal strength or courage to do what they needed. So they would lapse into fascism to get governmental control of thought. And in good conscience, trying to better you when they're dead wrong, they will impose fascism as readily as these political thugs did prior to World War II in Germany and in Italy, and to an extent in Japan with Tojo.
Let me say something. And let me, who was it? It was Miss T in the comment section. Sometimes I do glance if I remember, but she said DACA were not born here. They came here usually at young ages with illegal parents. They are not anchor babies, two totally separate groups of people. You're absolutely right. That is true. And I forgot because I'm associating DACA with anchor. DACA, and this is why, going back to the affirmative action conversation, does that particular new ruling of affirmative action, does it affect DACA? Because, yeah, they weren't born here. They came here with illegal parents at a young age, and this is all they know. So say they came here at 5, they went through the schools and everything just floating under the radar, and they're able to go to colleges or whatever, which, by the way, I feel as though does teeter under the umbrella of DACA, under affirmative action. Does this ruling of affect DACA students? And DACA students could never be present here. Maybe the anchor babies, but I still have a problem with that. So thank you for that clarification, Ms. T. So with that said, Judge, when we was talking about this new ruling on affirmative action, when it comes to education, do you think that this will affect DACA students, which was probably one of the main reasons Asians wanted to get rid of quote unquote race base, to make their group stronger when it comes to certain elite universities? And does this directly affect DACA students?
Well, yes and no. See, the whole thing with the DACA bit and the whole trend to illegal aliens, and I call them that because they are not legal under the law, is revealed in Article 1 to the Constitution. I've said it before. Article 1 says every 10 years there shall be a census conducted, quote, the primary purpose of which, unquote, is to establish the apportionment of representation in the House of Representatives. So what they want is to count as many people in states like California, New York, et cetera, Illinois, so that those states will maintain the number of representatives they have in Congress without losing them based on population loss. The interesting and the really nasty part about it is they can't vote in these federal elections, but they will be counted. So the far left liberal elements that are advocating their counting and inclusion will be able to get more influence in spite of the fact that the people they will be representing in large part can't vote. See, it's a catch-22 for the citizenry and a benefit for somebody that control that. If the legals add to the number of people in your state and get counted, your state is entitled to greater proportional representation. But if your state leans to the left, you know that these people can't vote. So the left side gets a lot of influence that they otherwise wouldn't get. That's that whole thing about making DC a state. DC is not a particularly large city, but it is way over in the left category. So if you give them 2 senators and congressmen like a state, you let a small medium-sized city have the influence of a state, and that's wrong. If you want to give the citizens who live in DC the vote for voting senators and voting congressmen, not just those who can speak but can't vote, then what you need to do is reseed the district back to Maryland and keep the Capitol Mall as the much diminished, much smaller DC. And that will solve the whole equitable problem, and they will be able to vote for folk that can vote in Congress. So, I mean, that's just one of the things they're doing. Oh, one other little thing on that Article 1 bit. I have participated as an adult in 5 censuses. The one in 2020 was the only one in my life where I was not asked whether I was a citizen, how I became a citizen, and what the status was in the event I answered a certain kind of way. The citizenship status of my parents was. It's the only one. And that is a new thing because they didn't want to know whether somebody could vote. They just wanted somebody to be counted. And by the way, that's like the 3/5 clause. Everybody thinks is talking about black people, only 3/5 of the human. It doesn't say anything about race. What it says is in Article 1, for purposes of apportionment, 3/5 of all those held in involuntary servitude or slavery shall be counted toward the number. And that's what they're doing. In this case, it's 100% of those who are present in the state, whether or not they are citizens, shall be counted toward the number to determine the apportionment of representation in Congress. That's the way you need to understand it. Again, the way they are running this thing with the illegals and the way they conducted the 2020 census, the Constitution would effectively be amended to read, for purposes of determining representation in Congress, all persons within the state, whether or not they are legal citizens, whether or not they can vote, shall be counted toward that number.
That's what it says?
No, that's what it would be reading if they get away with what they're doing. That's what this is all about with the illegals, and not counting or asking your citizenship status on the census. It would effectively morph the Constitution into saying, for purposes of determining representation or the number of representatives in Congress, all of those persons within a state, legal or illegal, shall be counted toward that number. And see, that's what they're trying to get.
Who's they trying to
get? The Biden administration, the Democratic Party, when they're supporting illegals being brought in, when they're talking about the DACA situation, when they're trying to deal with in New York, letting illegals vote in an election, whether or not they're citizens. You see, they can't do that in a federal election. You can't vote if you're not a citizen. All right? But it doesn't make any difference. In fact, they don't want them to vote. They just want to be counted.
Right. Well, the reason what I was getting at as far as the DACA is because there is something to where DACA, the whole acronym of DACA, does allow them to apply for college. However, affirmative action, race-based, probably would also help favor them getting into certain colleges, along with them having good grades. And these are people who are not legal citizens. So with this specific portion that was new ruling on affirmative action, race-based via education, that can somehow chip away at DACA admissions, because you could say, yes, I'm applying as I'm a DACA student, I'm applying as a DACA student, but also I will be considered a minority, which would probably help me fall under affirmative action, but that's no longer. So it was just a question. It was just a question. All right, I see somebody requesting to come up. And then I want to get into France. So did you want to say something, Shut? And anybody else want to request to come up, please do so. Just request to come up as we're talking. Shut, did you want to say something? Shut up and shoot. Can you unmute?
My bad. What's going on, Dana? What's good? What's up,
Hello.
Judge? Hey, it's
How you
hot in
doing?
Memphis right now. I mean, shoot, it's real hot. I'm going back inside.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna be no barbecue today because it's too hot to eat. But I want.
Oh, I hope you would order some
I got
of
your
my
sauce.
sauce.
I got your sauce. I ain't using it today though. It's too. I'm eating popsicles today. It's just too hot.
I know. I just stuck my head
Yeah,
out
it's
the
hot.
door.
I got a question for you though. About I was asking Dana about the that reparations task force situation here. That they allotted
$5
$5 million.
they put aside. Yeah, the 5 million. You know, Memphis, as crooked as Memphis is, they're just trying to get a pot with petty cash in it so they can steal it. They're already missing money out of it. And see, here's the other thing about Memphis. Let's assume that there is a reasonable prospect to get reparations. The problem is this: if black folk are owed reparations, assuming that that is a legitimate proposition, let's assume it is for purposes of this discussion, why should they have to pay it to themselves? That's like, why should the victim of a crime have to pay for his loss?
Right.
In other words, if Memphis is almost 70% black, that means that black folk effectively, through property taxes, sales tax, and the overwhelming majority of the revenue available to the city of Memphis to operate, why should the victims of what reparations is supposed to be compensating for have to pay for what happened to them? You get what I'm saying?
That's right. I'm with you.
Now, it's like, okay, I'm not against it in concept, but the way we do it in Memphis with our city council and county commission, they're just trying to get some petty cash to steal from. That's like, what's her name on the Board of Education that just resigned, said the same thing I'm saying, and the audits are showing she's right. The Board of Education is using stuff like any contract under $100,000 does not have to be approved by the board. And she's been alleging, and audits are showing, there's a lot of theft and wrongdoing in that, where people get several $1 million of total contracts, none of which go over the line.
Wow.
So yeah,
now,
that's
so
one of the things I'm going to straighten up.
so as of now, no, they haven't. Nobody's put $5 million in a pot somewhere that somebody's snooping in as of yet.
They're supposed to. They basically authorized it. I don't know what's happened. I don't know if Strickland signed off on it. I don't know where they're going to get the money.
That's what I was telling some dudes yesterday. They told me I was lying about it. I said I ain't heard a word. And I said I'll ask Judge about it next time I talk to him. Now listen, somebody could have done took $99,000 out of it and staying up under that 100,000 mark, and it go unnoticed. But I haven't heard of any money being put in a pot yet, and I don't know if it will be. But I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'll give you an example. we've got either, depending upon how the statute of limitations works these days on it, either 12,000 or 28,000 untested rape kits that have prevented justice from being brought on behalf of a lot of women in Memphis for being raped. Now, almost 10 years ago, they apportioned $7.2 million to be paid to a New York firm in an open-ended contract with a former U.S. attorney / assistant district attorney in the Memphis area. So she would get paid for vetting these tests. And it was supposed to have been accomplished within 5 years. They did not. They stole a bunch of money out of the accounts. They renewed it for another 5 years, and they still haven't done it. And Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is coming in saying, hey, we can get them tested in 30 days. What's the problem? Meanwhile, it's interesting. Why is the city of Memphis paying for Collierville, Cordova, Germantown, Arlington, and Millington, which are in the county, not the city? That's so there's a bigger pot that can be rationalized, so more money can be stolen. And if you want to see some other instances, check out what's now not available in the land bank and where it went to and what the deals are. Check out what's happening with the proposed conversion of the football stadium into a soccer arena and the building of a new football stadium. Check out what's going on with financing the reconstruction of a downtown international hotel with city money. Check out about selling 25 acres centered on that Greyhound bus depot, the old one, right across from that Redbirds baseball stadium, and how somebody got that for just $600K. And then check out the money that the city is setting aside to develop a 28 luxury unit development with associated special boutiques. Check out the money going into downtown development, where it's actually just becoming high-rise condos with further restricted parking. Check out what's going on where everybody will have to park out by the fairgrounds in order to get downtown and take bus transportation down there. Check out what happened with that park where Nathan Bedford Forest used to be, and how somebody, along with a Confederate, wound up getting passed on the county commission a no bid for $2,500 for that multi-million-dollar park, so they could get rid of a statue, and how somebody that supported and co-introduced the resolution got a half brother to get paid a whole lot of money to take down the statue, store the statue, and then somebody who was involved with that who bought it to sell it to a Confederate museum. Check out what happened with the properties next to the Metal Museum down on the river that they got. You know where they are for $2,500 no bid, and you get legislation passed so a company that you set up can get them. What kind of ripoff is that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And look, all these potholes in this city. Everybody's got pothole damage. I know folk who have gotten loved ones killed because they swerved into ongoing traffic hitting a pothole. And you can't even get that replaced. Our city used to be the cleanest in the country, always getting awards. It looks like a trash can now. You can't get anything done. We just had a sprinkle the other day, and damn it, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water broke down again.
Look like it flooded. Hey, this is the last question, Dana. You know, they had that big race in Nashville, that NASCAR race last weekend, and I went. I was in Nashville Sunday, so I walk up in there. You know, it ain't many blacks out there, but Bubba Wallace was there, and Michael Jordan had his team out there, and I was trying to meet Michael Jordan. Now, as soon as I get up in there, now I'm gonna ask you this: are you ready for Blue Oval City? I get up in there. Ford got this. It had to be 10,000 square feet tent set up, Judge, with Ford Blue Oval City on it. The tent was air conditioned, had some of the best food you could think of in this tent. And I said, these boys are coming in hard and heavy. And I'm thinking like you thinking now. That stretch of 40 all the way to Memphis is going to be the next black Mecca. I don't see what can stop
it. Won't be the next black Mecca because they're not getting locals. They're trying to import the workers. 27,500 to be employed in the next 3.5 years.
You think they're going to load us down with Mexicans?
Yes. Next damn thing, I'll name the name. Van Turner, who was also the one that got that property with the Johnny Reb statue on it, who introduced that 2,500 no bid to his corporation, has been working with the state comptroller and the governor to bamboozle the people in Mason out of their just due. What's going on is the governor of our state has a controlling interest in the corporate entity that will be supplying the battery parts for those all-electric cars that Ford will be making.
Right.
The mayor of Tipton County, with inside information, bought 550 acres of what is now cheap rural land, which is going to be right in the center of this proposed blue oval thing. Van Turner, who is an attorney and ought to know Bam better when it comes to ethics, came in as president of the NAACP from Memphis to intervene in that lawsuit that the citizens of Mason had filed against the state comptroller's office. He comes in there, assumes representation, and he settles this whole thing where the city dismisses its lawsuit against the comptroller, and the city has to pay off the damages that resulted from 20 years of some crooks stealing from them. In other words, the victim's got to pay for being the victim of a crime.
All right, thank you. Shut up.
Wait a minute. The state comptroller was trying to take over Mason to clear the way for Ford to be blue oval by illegally conceding that he could snatch the doggone charter for the city and give it back to Tipton County, whose mayor, just damn it, bought 550 acres so they could give it to Ford to make in the blue oval. I'll be damned that Ford Motor Company needs to name a Tennessee city. That is just wrong. So we also have Cadillac. See, it's a big ripoff.
All right, there are other speakers.
I know, Dana. You know, Dana, how this thing go when me and Judge get to going.
Yeah, well, honey, you need to come up whenever he do the Twitter space, and we've been going on for over an hour, but I want to get to other speakers, so just sit tight, just stay there, and I'll come back to you.
Okay, I'll talk to you in a minute, Judge.
All right, just mute up. Because yes, Judge Joe Brown is one of familiar Memphis. This is why he does a weekly Twitter space every Tuesday. So, you know, and I'm glad Shut Up and Shoot and come up, and because you are in Memphis, you're asking him about Memphis, and that is the purpose of the Twitter space. And of course, we talk about stuff that's going on nationally, internationally, but he's running for mayor. I put in a Jumbotron, his website, go and donate. So anybody that do not live in Memphis, you can donate to his campaign. His campaign is grassroots. It is not politically bought by corporations. If that's the case, he wouldn't have to sit up here and do Twitter space every week. However, it is a media blackout in Tennessee, specifically Memphis, because they don't want him to win. So we need your support. Donate. The judge's birthday is tomorrow, so y'all better donate for his birthday. Yes, I'm not asking, I'm demanding. So I want to go to the speakers. I have Mike.
Don't judge him, Joe Brown.